You are currently sleepwalking into the greatest enclosure of human freedom since the invention of the fence, and you are doing it with a smile on your face because it feels convenient. The global war on cash is not a natural evolution of economics, nor is it a benevolent campaign to improve public hygiene or stop the drug trade. It is a deliberate, synchronized architectural project designed to strip mine the last remnants of personal sovereignty from the population and replace the concept of private property with the concept of state permission. You have been conditioned to view the transition to a cashless society as a technological upgrade, a way to make your life faster and smoother. But the architect looks at the QR code and the contactless reader and sees the bars of a digital prison cell that is being erected around you while you are distracted by the glowing screen. By the end of this protocol, you will understand that the liquidation of physical currency is the keystone in the arch of total totalitarian control, because cash is the only form of wealth that exists outside the electronic ledger, and therefore it is the only form of wealth that belongs to you rather than the system. To fully comprehend the magnitude of this threat, you must first deconstruct the lie that digital money is simply money in a computer. It is not. Physical cash is a bearer asset. This means that if you hold the $20 bill in your hand, you are the absolute owner of that value. It requires no electricity to function. It requires no internet connection to validate. And most importantly, it requires no third-party intermediary to authorize the transaction. When you hand a bill to a butcher for a steak, the transaction is peer-to-peer, immediate, and final. It is a moment of pure liberty where two free men exchange value without the oversight of the state. Digital money, however, is not an asset. It is a ledger entry. It is a liability of the bank. When you see a number in your banking app, you do not own that money. You own a legal claim against the bank, a promise that they will pay you if they can and if they want to. By eliminating cash, the system forces 100% of your economic energy into a legal structure where you are an unsecured creditor to a precarious financial institution, and where every single attempt to feed yourself or your family requires the electronic approval of a remote server that is programmed to judge you. The primary objective of this surveillance grid is the construction of the high-definition life profile. The soft men argue that they have nothing to hide, believing that privacy is only for criminals. But this is the reasoning of a serf. The system wants to see every penny you spend, not to catch terrorists, but to build a predictive model of your psychology that is accurate enough to manipulate your behavior. Every time you swipe your card, you are broadcasting a signal. The coffee you buy at 8 a.m. reveals your sleep patterns and your caffeine addiction. The fast food you buy for lunch reveals your metabolic health and your impulse control. The donation you make to a political streamer reveals your ideological loyalty. The flowers you buy or don't buy reveal the status of your relationship. When these thousands of data points are aggregated over a decade, the bank and the data brokers know you better than you know yourself. They know when you are depressed, they know when you are manic, they know when you are vulnerable to advertising, and they know exactly how far they can push you before you break. You are not a customer in this system. You are a data farm, and your transaction history is the crop. In a cash economy, your spending is a data black hole. It vanishes into the fog of the real world, preserving the mystery and the dignity of your private life. In a cashless economy, you are living in a glass house where the walls are made of algorithms and the curtains are illegal. Furthermore, the liquidation of cash is the necessary prerequisite for the implementation of negative interest rates, which is the economic mechanism of theft that will define the next decade. The central banks of the world are trapped in a debt spiral that can never be paid back, so their only option is to inflate the debt away by destroying the value of the currency. To do this, they need to stimulate consumption and punish saving. In a normal world, you are paid interest to save money. In the new normal, the central banks want to set interest rates below zero, effectively taxing you for holding money in the bank. If the rate is -3%, your savings of $100,000 will become $97,000 in a year simply for sitting there. This is designed to force you to spend every penny you earn, keeping you on the hamster wheel of consumption. However, this theft has a fatal flaw: the zero lower bound. As long as physical cash exists, the central bank cannot push rates significantly below zero, because if they try to tax your deposits, you will simply withdraw your cash and hide it under a mattress, where it yields 0%, which is better than -3%. Cash acts as a shield for the saver, a physical barrier that prevents the state from confiscating your wealth through negative rates. By banning cash, they remove the exit door. They lock you inside the burning building of the fiat system, so that when they set the rates to negative, you have no choice but to watch your wealth evaporate or spend it on useless consumer goods, effectively turning your labor into fuel for their dying engine. But the economic tyranny pales pales in comparison to the potential for social engineering. The ultimate goal of the cashless society is the introduction of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. This is not just digital money, it is programmable money. It is code that comes with rules attached. In the current system, money is neutral. It does not care who you are. In the CBDC system, the money itself can be weaponized against you. The state can program your digital wallet with smart contracts that enforce compliance. Imagine a world where your stimulus check comes with an expiration date. If you do not spend it within 30 days, the money vanishes. This prevents you from saving for your independence and forces you to stimulate the economy. Imagine a world where your money is geofenced. It only works within 5 miles of your home during a declared climate emergency or pandemic lockdown, rendering you a prisoner in your own neighborhood, not by police force, but by economic disability. Imagine a world where your ability to buy meat, gasoline, or ammunition is capped by a carbon quota attached to your digital ID. Once you hit your limit, your money simply declines at the point of sale. This is the Skinner box of the future. They will not need to arrest dissidents. They will simply turn off their ability to transact. If you speak out against the regime, your wallet is frozen. If you attend the wrong protest, your insurance is cancelled. If you support the wrong candidate, your business account is suspended. We have already seen the beta test of this in Canada during the trucker protests, where bank accounts were frozen without due process. In a society with cash, a debanked man can still survive. He can buy food, he can pay for a motel, he can travel. In a cashless society, a debanked man is a ghost. He is deleted from the economy, starved into submission, and rendered powerless without a single shot being fired. The soft men enable this prison because they are addicted to frictionless spending. The banking cartel has weaponized the neurochemistry of dopamine to make you hate cash. Physical money carries a psychological weight known as the pain of payment. When you count out 5 $20 bills to pay for a dinner, your brain's pain centers light up. You feel the loss of resources, which makes you a disciplined, careful spender. Digital payments are designed to be painless. The swipe, the tap, the Face ID, it abstracts the cost. You do not feel the money leaving. Research shows that people spend 20% to 30% more when using cards than when using cash. This is intentional. The system relies on you being a gluttonous, impulsive consumer who buys things you don't need with money you don't have. They want you to live in a state of permanent low-level debt, making minimum payments on credit cards. Because a man in debt is a man who is afraid to lose his job, and a man who is afraid to lose his job is an obedient worker who will not rock the boat. Cash is the tool of the stoic. It forces you to confront the reality of your consumption. Digital is the tool of the hedonist. It allows you to live in a fantasy of infinite resources until the bill comes due. Finally, the narrative war is designed to make you feel like a criminal for demanding privacy. The propaganda machine relentlessly pushes the message that cash is dirty, that it is the currency of drug dealers, tax evaders, and terrorists. They want you to look at a man paying with a $100 bill and view him with suspicion. This is a psychological operation to turn the citizenry into deputy sheriffs for the state. They are weaponizing social pressure to force you into the digital pen. The architect rejects this framing entirely. Privacy is not a concession to criminality. It is the fundamental right of a free people. You use cash, not because you are breaking the law, but because you refuse to acknowledge the state's right to audit your existence. Every time you use cash, you are casting a vote for a world where the government does not have a God-eye view of your life. You are keeping the muscles of the shadow economy alive. You are ensuring that there is a parallel rail of commerce that can function when the lights go out. The system wants to see every penny because if they can see it, they can tax it, they can control it, and they can take it. The liquidation of cash is the liquidation of the individual. If you lose the ability to transact privately, you have not just lost a convenience, you have lost the ability to be a free moral agent in the world. The resistance against the digital prison is not fought on the internet, which is a battlefield already captured and fortified by the enemy, but rather in the physical world through the deliberate and strategic cultivation of the grey economy, the unmapped zone of commerce where free men trade value without a digital chaperone. You must understand that the soft men have abandoned the physical marketplace for the sterile convenience of the app-based economy, believing that ordering food from Uber Eats or hiring a TaskRabbit to fix a shelf is the peak of modern living. But the architect recognizes that these platforms are extraction engines designed to siphon value out of local communities and funnel it into the coffers of Silicon Valley while simultaneously harvesting data on every participant. Every time you swipe a Visa card or use a corporate platform, you are paying a double tax: a monetary tax in the form of transaction fees that bleed the merchant dry, and a privacy tax in the form of metadata that feeds the surveillance algorithm. To break this cycle, you must consciously choose to bypass the corporate intermediaries and build direct analog relationships with the producers and fixers in your immediate orbit, paying independent mechanics, farmers, butchers, and tradesmen in physical currency to create a closed loop of value that the banking cartel cannot touch, tax, or track. This is not merely an economic strategy, it is a survival mechanism, because a plumber who is paid in cash and treated with dignity is an ally who will answer your call on a Sunday night during a crisis because you help him feed his family without the system taking a 30% cut, whereas a gig worker paid through an app is just a mercenary with no loyalty to anything but the algorithm that governs his rating. The grey market is the only economy that relies on high-trust human relationships rather than zero-trust digital verification. In the digital world, trust is replaced by code. You trust the app to deliver the service, and the provider trusts the app to pay them. If the app fails, or if you are deplatformed, that relationship evaporates instantly. In the grey market, the relationship is the currency. By consistently using cash, you become a preferred client in the shadow economy. You are the man who provides immediate liquidity. This status grants you access to the real inventory, the best cuts of meat that the butcher keeps in the back, the immediate service slot at the mechanic's shop, the off-market real estate deal that never gets listed on Zillow. The soft men do not understand this. They think the price on the screen is the price. The architect knows that the price on the screen is the sucker's price for those who pay with debt. When you carry a substantial stack of bills, a heavy wallet, you possess a psychological weapon that alters the physics of negotiation. Physical money triggers a primal instinct in the seller that digital numbers cannot match. When you place a thick envelope of cash on the table during a negotiation for a car, a contractor job, or a bulk purchase, you shift the power dynamic instantly. The seller sees the option of immediacy. He knows that if he agrees right now, he gets the value right now, with no chargebacks, no processing fees, and no paper trail. This often cracks their resolve and secures you discounts of 10, 20, or 30%, effectively increasing your purchasing power simply because you hold the liquid asset. Furthermore, you must implement the data black hole protocol to blind the predictive algorithms that are trying to map your life. The surveillance state relies on pattern of life analysis. They look at the frequency, location, and nature of your transactions to build a model of your behavior. If you pay for everything digitally, your resolution is 4K Ultra HD. They can see your diet, your travel, your hobbies, and your vices. The architect disrupts this signal by withdrawing a significant percentage of his monthly income, let's say 30% to 40%, in cash on a random schedule. Once that cash leaves the ATM, it vanishes into a fog of war. The bank knows you withdrew $2,000, but they do not know if you spent it on organic beef, ammunition, precious metals, or if you simply burned it. You have introduced entropy into their system. You become a statistical anomaly, a ghost that consumes resources but generates no data. This protects you from lifestyle audits and social credit penalties because there is no digital evidence of your consumption habits. If they institute a carbon tax on meat and you buy your meat with cash from a local farmer, your digital carbon footprint remains zero. You are effectively living a high consumption life while appearing to be a monk on paper. This discipline requires a rejection of the frictionless lie. The modern world is designed to be frictionless. They want you to tap, click, and consume without thinking. Carrying cash introduces friction. You have to go to the bank. You have to count the bills. You have to deal with change. The soft men are too lazy for this. They view it as a hassle. The architect views this friction as a discipline filter. The act of physically handling your wealth keeps you connected to the reality of your labor. It makes you respect the value of the energy you expended to earn it. It prevents the mindless dopamine spending that plagues the digital consumer. Moreover, by circulating cash, you are keeping the muscles of liberty alive in your community. If everyone stops using cash, the infrastructure for cash, ATMs, cash registers, bank tellers, will be dismantled due to lack of demand. By using cash, you are casting a vote for its continued existence. You are signaling to the market that there is a demand for analog trade. You are a guardian of the exit door. We must also address the resilience of the grey market in a grid-down scenario. The soft men live with a dangerous dependency on the electrical grid, the internet, and the banking servers. They blindly assume that the card reader will always beep. The architect understands that the gray market is the only market that functions during a cyber attack, a natural disaster, or a banking collapse. When the lights go out, the man with the platinum Amex is a beggar. He cannot buy water. He cannot buy fuel. He has no value. The man with the stack of 20s and the relationship with the local producers is a king. The gray market does not need electricity. It needs trust and paper. By building these relationships now, during times of stability, you are securing your supply chain for times of chaos. You are not just buying goods, you are buying future goodwill. You are establishing yourself as a serious operator in the real world, unlike the Zoom class, who will perish the moment the Wi-Fi disconnects. Ultimately, the gray market protocol is about reclaiming your status as a peer in the economy rather than a subject. In the digital system, you are a user with permissions. In the cash economy, you are a sovereign with property. You trade eye to eye, hand to hand, man to man. There is no terms of service. There is no moderation team. There is no algorithm to ban you. It is the last frontier of the Wild West, and it is hiding in plain sight right under the nose of the surveillance state. All you have to do to enter it is go to the ATM, take out the paper, and refuse to put it back. The final and most critical pillar of your financial defense system is the construction of a sovereign vault within your own territory, a strategic decision that separates the dependent soft men who rely entirely on the functioning of the electronic grid from the architect who understands that in a fragile world, physical possession is the only law that matters. You must internalize the brutal legal reality that the moment you deposit money into a bank, you are no longer the legal owner of that money. You instantly become an unsecured creditor to the bank, meaning you have essentially loaned them your capital in exchange for a digital IOU and a promise to pay you back, a promise that can be legally broken the moment the institution faces insolvency. The soft men operate under the delusion that their deposits are sacred and fully insured, but the architect knows about the bail-in legislation passed in most Western nations following the 2008 financial crisis, which legally empowers banks to confiscate a portion of depositor funds to recapitalize themselves during a liquidity crisis, effectively turning your hard-earned savings into worthless bank equity to save the casino from its own bad bets. By keeping 100% of your net worth in the banking system, you are voluntarily placing your head in a guillotine and hoping the executioner, who is also the banker, decides not to pull the lever, but by physically withdrawing a substantial reserve of cash and securing it in a fireproof hidden location under your direct control. You remove those chips from the table and ensure that no matter how badly the bank mismanages its ledger, your ability to feed your family remains untouched. This sovereign vault is not merely a hedge against banking theft. It is your insurance policy against the terrifying fragility of the technological infrastructure that supports the modern illusion of wealth. We live in a society where the ability to buy a loaf of bread depends on a delicate, invisible chain of electricity, internet connectivity, satellite synchronization, and software stability, and if any single link in that chain snaps, whether due to a state-sponsored cyber attack, a massive solar flare, a natural disaster, or a government-mandated internet blackout to quell civil unrest, the man with the platinum credit card becomes instantly destitute, standing helpless in the checkout line with a piece of plastic that does nothing. Cash is the only offline protocol for value transfer. It is a battery that comes fully charged with purchasing power and requires no external signal to function, meaning that while the masses are panicking because the ATMs are dark and the card readers are silent, the architect moves through the chaos as a king, using his physical reserves to secure fuel, food, medicine, and transport when those resources are scarcest and most valuable. You must realize that in a localized collapse, the price of goods does not skyrocket in dollars. It skyrockets in liquidity, meaning the vendor will not sell his last generator for $1 million trapped in a frozen bank account, but he will sell it for $500 in crisp, tangible bills that he can use immediately to survive. Furthermore, you must structure the contents of this vault with tactical precision, avoiding the amateur mistake of hoarding only high-denomination bills like $100 notes, which become practically useless in a genuine survival scenario because no one will have the liquidity to break them. The architect stocks his vault with a pyramid of liquidity, heavily weighted towards 10s and 20s, recognizing that in a grid-down economy, you want to be able to pay for a gallon of gas, a hot meal, or a bribe without flashing a large bill that signals you are a wealthy target or forcing you to overpay because the merchant cannot make change. This is not hoarding, it is logistics. It is the recognition that money is a tool for survival, and a tool that cannot be deployed in the correct increment is a broken tool. This physical stash effectively acts as your freedom fund, a tangible representation of 6 months to a year of autonomy that sits quietly in the dark, radiating a psychological power that fundamentally changes how you interact with the world. When you know you have the physical capacity to survive without a paycheck or a bank transfer for a year, you lose the subtle scent of desperation that plagues the employee class. You become harder to coerce, harder to intimidate, and harder to control because your compliance is no longer linked to your immediate survival. The soft men will argue that holding cash is stupid because it loses value to inflation. And while they are mathematically correct that cash depreciates by a few percent annually, they are strategically blind to the concept of the option premium. You are not holding cash to generate a return on investment. You are paying the inflationary loss as a premium for the option to be liquid, mobile, and sovereign during the very moments when the rest of the market is frozen. The 5% you lose to inflation is the cheap price you pay to ensure that your wealth is accessible 100% of the time, regardless of what the Federal Reserve, the power company, or the cyber terrorists decide to do. Ultimately, the sovereign vault is the battery of the resistance. It is the physical proof that you have reclaimed your labor from the digital ether and anchored it in the real world, ensuring that no matter how complex the digital prison becomes, you always hold the key to the exit in your own hand.